This seems to be a rather rare day. I'm going to see if I can get up the hill in two-wheel drive. Start breaking down the snow a little bit. Look at that, we can get down the road. That rain really made a difference. And a couple things coming down the pike in the channel. A lot of it centered around 372. Gonna head down to Bob's again, but that's gonna be a no camera day, I believe. I don't know, maybe pick up a little bit here and there. One thing I wanted to say really quick is I didn't use the right words on my last video, okay? And I was talking about the pop-up piston, but I was also talking about common service tool. And I'm gonna leave common service tool alone for a little bit. I think I need to get back to the shop more with the lathe and things like that, and do a little bit less of the repair, a little bit more of the building and the tools and things like that. Beginning to make that where I can turn out tools at a reasonable rate. Just for information, because people ask, a set of my tools is $100 minimum, and that depends on how many other things I have in the set. I mean, if it's just the basic set, it's going to be $100. Maybe when I get a CNC lathe, I can speed up my operations a little bit, but right now it's just me doing it one at a time by hand. 268 pop-up. Now, there's a couple things I did not point out that are very crucial. First is the reason why the 268 pop-up build is special is not just because it's a pop-up, it's because it's using a piston from a different model saw. And what's interesting about that is the distance between the wrist pin center line and the crown of the piston on the 268 is about 60 thousandths more than a standard 372 piston. So you've got 60 thousandths to play with in order to make a shape to conform better to the combustion chamber and shrink the volume of the combustion chamber. So when I was talking about the stuff that I like about the pop-up build, I was assuming starting with a piston like that where I have material to work with. If I do a pop-up with a standard piston, now that takes a fair amount of skill, because now I have to both trim the base of that cylinder in order to lower the cylinder enough. Now I've got all the issues with the ports that I was talking about in that other video, plus do the pop-up on the piston itself. So that's a much more extensive amount of machining. That's a much tougher task. But I like that concept, and I think the other piece of that is trying a 272 in one of the Husqvarna 52mm big bores. Someone had brought that up. That's a great idea. So I want to make that point, is the difference between doing just a pop-up generically and then using a pop-up concept where the blank or the piston has that extra material on the crown to work with, so I don't actually have to go and trim the base of the cylinder. Very, very, very important point to make. Because if I can get up here, that means Bob can get up here. And if Bob can get up here, that means we might do more minis. And I've got a bunch of work down in there to do, as well as where we've been working before. Well, it might be interesting to somebody to know what saws have pretty much dominated the truck time this last few weeks. Of course, we've had some crappy weather, so I haven't spent as much time. But before the weather came in, I had a fair amount of time up here. Ultimate Old Man saw sits there on its side in the back, and it'll get more time. It's just I've been feeling better after my hip's been replaced, you know. And this saw right here has been the block and tackle saw for quite a long time. But believe it or not, there it is. And I've retroed back to that one. Believe it or not, I've put some time on that as well, my old 925. And project saws, in this case, that's the Hyway top end 372 that was stuck, and I unstuck it. I think I did a video on that saw. That's what I want to run today, just to see where it is. We're going to fire up all 4 of these saws just to see how hard it is. And they've been sitting in there now for a couple of weeks, like I said. So this is kind of real. And I just want to point out that while it's not terrible, you know, despite what the Oracle of the West points out in terms of all the advantages of a outboard clutch. I still prefer the 372 and a bunch of the steel style inboard clutches where the sprocket's sitting right out there versus this arrangement. Now Husky has done a pretty good job because they've taken the chain adjuster, and instead of having it on the saw chassis, they have it on the side cover, which really makes it a lot easier to deal with. Kudos to Husky for making an awkward design actually workable in the field. And while I'm saying good things about other people's stuff, these Cobra latches or claps or belt clasps, I don't know what you want to call them, but they are awesome. These things are absolutely amazing. They're pricey, but putting them on these chaps have made a big difference. Second, we're going to try putting one of these into service with a Pro Logger. And again, these are the ones that have steel sides sandwiching an aluminum core. And I'm kind of excited to see how they work in a real logger's environment where they get a lot of bore cutting and plunge cutting, you know. The totals didn't last at all. The tips blew apart immediately. The rest of the bar stood up quite well, but those tips just simply didn't hold up to that kind of work. Well, these are the saws I'm going to try to fire off. And like I said, I forgot my tripod and I forgot my gloves. Time compressed, so we'll see how this plays out. Woo! That's just what it does. Excellent, excellent, excellent work saw right there. So it's going to sit out for a backup if that other one doesn't last. Let's see if it starts. This one here damn near wore me out. Now let's see what we got. Much better. Still a little bit lean on the bottom, but much better overall. I think I've got it now. So this is that saw that stuck, and I put a hone in it, and I sort of gussied it up. I ran a little bit too lean there. Should have got the screwdriver on the carburetor sooner. I don't even hurt it. It's running pretty good. So we're going to put this in the work rotation and see if I can't get it to start a little bit easier than that freaking workout it gave me before. But that blue monster started pretty easy. What was it, 3 pulls? And of course my auto tunes, they always do. So anyway, I'm going to get a shot of the sunset, and then I'm going to take some of that wood I just split and put it in the back of the truck, so I actually feel like I did something today. Well, I guess the bottom line is that saw runs. This is my evening workout. I'll be doing this every day that I can get up here, you know. Sometimes it'll be with the truck and sometimes it'll be with the tractor. But for me to survive my old age, I have to keep moving, get some exercise. So, yep. I think that's a beautiful view. So the Hyway hot rod lives. It actually runs really strong. And yes, it was running extremely lean in the beginning. And I took that carb and I wound it out about a half turn in order to settle it down, both high and low. So it was pretty lean. This truck does pretty well, right? Kind of curious what it's going to do on the ice on the hill up there. We'll find out how good a four-wheel drive system it has going up that ice hill. Well, this is day 2 with Hyway Hot Rod, and I figured it was time to actually settle in there and do a little bit of carb tuning on it. And the top end was alright, it wasn't as far off as I thought, but the bottom end was way off. And in particular, the idle screw was holding the throttle open quite a bit. So I overcompensated on the hill with fuel. And this morning I brought it out and wound that idle screw down a little bit and turned the fuel screw back in, a low speed fuel back in, and that's what you have right there. Alright, a little better prepared day 2 on this saw here. And maybe it will perform better than it did yesterday. Starting, because I got the carburetor set a little bit better than it was. And actually quite a bit better than it was. Always shake the gas up, by the way, before you. I went through a tank of gas yesterday. Looks like to me. So we will see what it does today in terms of starting. And again, this is that saw that had a Hyway top end that I decked. Then it had a cold seize and then chipped off a piece of plating. Let's see whether or not today it's more cooperative in terms of wanting to start than it was yesterday. Oh, that's a lot of compression. That's better.
Question is, does it restart? Now I think the Hyway hot rod here lives pretty well. I think it runs pretty good. A little bit of piston slap, but that's what you'd expect for honing it out as much as I did. That's why you don't want to take too much off that cylinder. But it actually runs pretty good. So we put at least 2 tanks through it. I didn't run out of gas, but I filled it up twice, which means I used part of the first tank, part of the second tank, and I just used part of that third fill. So figured 2 tanks of gas. You know, I did some stuff around here. I did some stuff off camera, and it seems none the worse for wear. Pushing on it like that, I didn't have to push hard on that ash. For that matter, I really didn't push that hard on it. I just kind of let the chain eat its way through. So I don't think I really stressed it that much, but by the same token, it's still running too. So got some work done. I'll load this up and go home and put together a Hyway hot rod saw lives video. Back that truck right down in here and fill it up. My daily exercise, shooting for that extra inch. But folks, the bottom line to this is that Hyway hot rod performed well and has provided some heat for my home for at least a couple of days. So that makes it worth it all by itself, bringing it back to life. I'm going to turn the camera around. You see a little bit of winter wind. Yeah, we're supposed to get a couple of inches tonight. Maybe I can get a better view from up here.